For years, Stranger Things wasn't just a TV show, right? It was a full-on cultural event. The 80s vibes, those characters we all fell in love with, that crazy mystery. Everything was building to this epic finale. Expectations were just sky high. But then, when it was all over, the reaction was, well, let's just say it was complicated. And this quote, it pretty much gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. Look, millions of people absolutely loved the ending, and that's great. But there was also this really sharp, really vocal critique that popped up. And this quote just nails it. The idea that for all its huge, epic moments, the finale just couldn't live up to the amazing world the fans had built up in their heads. And we're not just talking about a little disappointment here. This was a huge disconnect for a big part of the fan base. Okay, but before we really get into all the criticism, we've got to get one thing straight. The finale was a monster hit. Look at this number. It pulled in over $25 million at the box office in just a couple of hours. So you have this massive commercial success on one hand and this really intense critical fallout on the other. That gap is what makes this whole thing so interesting. So what happened? Where did it go wrong for some people? All right, first up, the fan theory trap. And you have to ask, did the audience actually write a better show? This first big point of criticism really digs into the show's mystery box approach. They were masters at dropping all these amazing questions and cliffhangers. But the problem, for some, was that the answers just didn't live up to the hype, especially when you put them next to the incredible theories the fans were cooking up online. And this really shows you that gap perfectly. In one column, you've got the fans. They're going full detective mode, right? We're talking complex theories about Vecna being someone else, secret dream worlds, alternate dimensions, just wild creative stuff. And then in the other column, you have what we actually got, a story that a lot of critics called, well, kind of paint by numbers. And look, the problem wasn't that the fan theories were wrong. The argument is that they were just better, more creative, more complex than the official story. So here's the real takeaway from this point. The critique is basically that the whole mystery box thing became a crutch for the writers. It's like they relied on us, the audience, to imagine a cooler, more epic story than the one they were actually going to give us. They dropped the breadcrumbs, and we baked this incredible cake in our minds. But when the show finally revealed its own cake, it just couldn't compare. And that's why it felt so flat for some. Okay, so that feeling of letdown then leads to another big problem. A story full of holes. Let's talk about the unanswered questions and the rules the show itself seemed to break. First on the list, what happened to the demo bats? Seriously. They give us one of the most amazing, heartbreaking moments of the whole season with Eddie's sacrifice, and then they just disappear. Poof, gone. This huge part of Vecna's army is just never mentioned or seen again. Where'd they go? And then there's Vecna himself. He's the big bad, right? The final boss? But his home base had zero security. Think about it. In any D&D campaign, which the show is built on, the main villain's lair is crawling with guards. But here, our heroes basically just stroll right in. It felt weirdly easy. Okay, this one's a biggie. So the question is, why didn't Will feel the Mind Flayer being attacked? We know he's connected to it. Now, the creators later said, oh, we just weren't showing him at that moment. But the show did show him. He was right there in the middle of the fight, using his powers. It's a direct contradiction, and fans definitely noticed. And what about this plan? The whole thing depended on a random pole lining up perfectly with an invisible portal in another dimension. Come on. It just feels less like a clever plan and more like ridiculously impossible luck. Even in a show with monsters, that's a tough one to swallow. So all these plot holes get even worse when you add in another big issue, a bloated cast and super low stakes. Basically, there were just too many characters and not enough real consequences. Just look at this. On the left, you've got the original Season 1 crew. A nice, tight group. On the right, the finale cast. It's huge. And when you have that many main characters, it gets almost impossible to give everyone a solid storyline. The focus just gets spread way too thin. And this quote from a critic just says it all. Nobody died. It's not about wanting characters to die, right? It's about stakes. It's about consequences. You've got the scariest, most powerful villain ever, and he can't take out a single one of the main heroes. It kind of makes Vecna seem, well, pathetic. So what happened was that, in the effort to give every single character a moment, the finale got bogged down. It felt like a lot of fan service, little scenes and goodbyes that were nice for the characters, but they didn't really move the main plot forward. And all that screen time could have been used to, deal with the whole end of the world thing. So we have plot holes and low stakes. But why? What's the root cause of all this? Well, one critic has this really cool theory to explain it, and it's called the storytelling pyramid. So here's how it's supposed to work. A really great story is built like a pyramid, from the bottom up. You start with a foundation, a big core idea. That big idea then makes your characters do things. It drives their actions. And only after all that, at the very top of the pyramid, do you get the payoff, real earned feelings from the audience. Let's break that down with an example. So your big idea could be who should get to control ultimate power, right? That idea leads to character actions. The government tries to take 11 while her friends try to protect her. And the result of those actions is the feeling. We feel scared for her, and then we feel relief or triumph when she's safe. See that? Idea, action, feeling. It's as solid structure. But here's the argument against the Stranger Things finale. It flipped that pyramid completely upside down. It didn't start with an idea. It started, and ended, with just the tip of the pyramid, feelings. It's like the show decided, okay, we want the audience to feel sad in this scene and happy in that scene. But because there was no solid foundation of ideas or actions underneath, those feelings came across as hollow or unearned. Let's look at some specific examples of this. Think about Will's really powerful emotional journey. It was great, but it had basically zero connection to the actual plan to stop Vecna. It was an emotional island. Or how about the military? They're just presented as the bad guys, full stop. There's no exploration of the bigger idea, like, hey, maybe a government should have defenses against interdimensional monsters. By skipping the idea part, you just get these emotional moments that feel disconnected from the logic of the story. So, after all is said and done, what's the legacy here? What will Stranger Things be remembered for? We got a big, loud, emotional finale for sure, but was there any real substance to it? And this quote really sums up that critique perfectly. The finale gave us lots and lots of stuff, tons of moments, but very little that felt like it was building a lasting legacy. The feeling was that it was huge, it was spectacular to look at, but maybe a little bit hollow on the inside. Like it was less than the sum of all its amazing parts. And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? For a lot of these critics and fans, the most fun part of the whole experience wasn't even the show itself. It was being part of the community, reading the crazy theories, and imagining all the possibilities. The fan creativity actually outshone the final product. So I'll leave you with this final question to think about. We know spin-offs are on the way, but if the real magic, the deep connection we all felt, was with these specific characters, Mike, Eleven, Dustin, the whole crew, can a new show really work? Is the name Stranger Things enough to make it a hit? Or was the real power always with the original party, and not just the world they lived in?